Hi, and welcome to part 2 of the 3D printed wall light. Initially this was going to be about wiring, but there's so much other stuff to talk about, I decided to make it into a 3-part video. Otherwise it gets way too long. Anyway, this second part is going to be about the walnut surround and some of the finishing I used on the lights. Here I'm coating the walnut surrounds with some water-based high-gloss polyurethane. I'll leave a link in the description below to tell you where to get this, but most of the stuff I use on this project comes from Amazon. I give it a couple of coats going with the grain, just to fill the grain up before I spray on a gloss coat. And when I say spray on, I'm just using the cheap rattle cans to spray on a gloss coat. It goes on top of the polyurethane very well, the Rust-Oleum high gloss finish. But this application by brush fills in all the grain and gives you something to rub down. I rubbed this down afterwards with 350 and 320 Silicon Carbide grit wet, and it gets off all the little nibs, dust, etc. Always go with the grain, it fills the grain much better. Now here I'm spraying it with a Rust-Oleum high gloss clear. Prior to this I've given it 2 coats of the polyurethane water-based high gloss and rubbed it down between each coat with 320 grit silicon carbide paper wet. I'm just giving it a couple of light coats. It dries pretty quickly. And when you finish spraying and filling and doing whatever you need to do to your surrounds, I always give the inside a file down to get rid of any filler, any runs of the gloss finish, because when you put it onto your final body, it will scratch the body if it's not nice and smooth. Now, using a low-tack painter's tape, I'm masking up the back of each of the walnut surrounds. You'll see that it's already marked with an F, that's the front. I'll make sure I fit them before I do any other work. I'm marking a center line, or center, so that I can drill a hole for the exit for the wires and cables. And also the holder. The holder must come through both the 3D printed part and the walnut surround. If you have a drill press, it's much easier to do this. I was just being lazy and did it by hand, but the drill press is preferred. Just a pilot hole first, and then come in with the hole the size of the screwed thread that comes through from the holder, from the bulb holder. Again, all these parts are going to be listed below, the bulb holders, the bulbs, etc. And as I said before, most of this stuff comes from Amazon. Just remove any of the swarf on the inside, any shards or pieces of wood that are sticking out, so it doesn't scratch the main body after you've sprayed it. You see here I've covered the finish with painter's tape so it doesn't get marred, and make sure you mark the front. Fit them onto your body, the main body of the light first, and make sure that they're orientated correctly, and then mark on the inside the front of each one. Makes it so much easier to assemble when it's finished. This also makes it easier. What I've done is I'm cutting the back very, very carefully on the bandsaw, just to allow it to spring open slightly. This just facilitates the fitting and stops it scratching the paint when you put it on. Be very, very careful when you spread these apart, because you can easily break open the joints. I did in a couple of joints on some of these, and it took a bit to get them glued back on, but you'll see how easy it is when you do that to slide it on, and it doesn't mar the finish of your main body of the light. This is just an example of the filler I've used, Bondo, on some of the lines here. There was a few lines, in fact quite a few lines, that I wasn't happy with. And I spent about 6 or 7 hours actually spraying with a matte black high build Sandable primer from Rust-Oleum, and then rubbing down and rubbing down and rubbing down after filling with Bondo. When you do this, make sure you wear gloves or plastic vinyl gloves, because this the actual wet dust will stain your hands just like paint. I found these vinyl gloves, but they're not very good, they rip easily, so in the end I went for a black 9mm thick glove, vinyl glove. It was powderless. Nine millimeter would be a bit too thick. I'm using 320 wet. A little tip here: if you put a drop, just one drop of washing up soap in your water, you'll find it'll cut much better and keep the sandpaper or the silicon carbide paper cleaner. Stops it from getting clogged up. So it's just one drop of washing soap or dish soap. Well, there you have it for this video. Those are now sprayed up in a base black, and after this I gave them a coat of a semi-matte finished black paint. I'll tell you what I did with that on the next video.